Welcome back. Today, we're looking at governance pushed right to the edge, using Bob Woodward and Robert Costa's book, Peril, as our main guide. And our mission here isn't just to walk through the timeline of the Trump-Biden transition. It's really to unpack something quite startling from these accounts, which is that maybe in America's most dangerous modern moment, the safety net wasn't just the law or the Constitution on paper. It seems like the nation's stability really came down to the actions, the choices, and maybe the traditions followed by a few key people under immense pressure.
Yeah, it's striking how fast that fear, that sense of constitutional crisis, led to actions that were, well, completely unprecedented by some of these figures. We really had to start right after January 6th.
Yeah.
And the focus has to be on General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Okay.
And first, we need to get our heads around his actual role. I mean, technically, he's the top military officer, yes, but he's primarily an advisor. He coordinates. He doesn't command troops in the field.
Right, not a commander.
But despite that, Peril, he felt this profound personal duty to be the firewall, to stop things spiraling into chaos.
And it wasn't just a vague worry, was it? The book lays out Milley's deep concerns about President Trump's stability, his state of mind in those final weeks. And the real fear was Trump might order some kind of unilateral military action, something illegal or crazy, as the book puts it.
Exactly. And that fear led to what is honestly one of the most jaw-dropping moments described. Milley made secure, direct calls to his opposite number in China, General Li Zuocheng.
After January 6th.
Yes, specifically on January 8th, just 2 days later. He called Li to basically say, look, we're stable. The U.S. government is okay. And crucially, he said the U.S. was not planning an attack or conduct any kinetic operations against you.
Wow. Why China specifically? I mean, beyond the obvious superpower dynamic.
Well, context is key here. China wasn't just sitting back. They were running aggressive war games near Taiwan, challenging U.S. Navy ships in the South China Sea. And Peril makes it clear the 6th. It spooked Beijing. It made them worry about American instability, maybe leading them to miscalculate.
So Milley saw this potential flashpoint.
Saw a powder keg, yeah, and felt he had to personally step in to manage global tensions. He apparently told his staff he was worried neither side really understood the other at that point.
This is where it gets incredibly sensitive, right? Because Milley wasn't just worried about some random military action. He was worried about the ultimate weapon.
The nuclear codes, yes. And he wasn't alone in that fear. Speaker Pelosi apparently called him worried Trump was, her words, a nut who might launch something.
Military hostilities or even a nuclear strike.
That's right. And Milley knew the system. The president alone gives the order. But he also realized the process, while designed to be secure, isn't totally foolproof against a president determined to bypass checks, especially if that order came suddenly. It puts subordinate officers in an almost impossible position legally. Refuse a direct order from the commander-in-chief. That's huge.
So what did he do? He couldn't just change the protocol?
No, but he tried to, let's say, reinforce it. He called the senior officers at the National Military Command Center, the NMCC. That's the Pentagon's nerve center for these kinds of orders.
Okay.
And he made them take what Peril describes as an oath. He told them that he, Milley, must be in the loop if any launch order came down.
He made them promise to call him.
More than that. He made them verbally confirm they understood and would comply. Twice. He asked, got it. They were like, yes, sir. He made them repeat it.
Okay, hold on. That sounds a lot like Milley inserting himself into the legal chain of command. Isn't that creating an extra step that shouldn't be there? A potential veto point.
That's precisely the tension, isn't it? On the surface, it looks like he's bending the rules, maybe even breaking them. But the argument presented in Peril is that Milley saw himself as enforcing the existing legal procedures for such an order, ensuring it wasn't done in haste or secretly.
So ensuring the consultation and legality checks happen.
Right. By forcing them to include him, he was essentially trying to guarantee the process wouldn't be short-circuited. It was an absolutely extraordinary step. It shows just how fragile he believed the situation was. The normal system felt broken.
Okay, that clarifies the intent, even if the action is debatable. So the military leadership is taking these drastic steps. What about the civilian side? Who is trying to manage the president internally? Let's shift to Attorney General Bill Barr. Milley actually reached out to him too, didn't he?
He did, and it speaks volumes. When Milley heard Barr might be on his way out, might resign, he called him. The book quotes Milley pleading, basically, man, you can't leave. You know you can't leave. We need you.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs calling the AG, begging him to stay.
Yeah. It shows how Barr, maybe unexpectedly, was seen by some key figures as this anchor, someone trying to keep things grounded inside an administration that senior officials increasingly saw as, well, chaotic. Barr himself was apparently ready to go, had a resignation letter prepared, but others saw him as essential.
That dynamic is fascinating. And Barr, according to the book, was pretty blunt with the president himself, especially about the election fraud claims.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't sugarcoat his assessment. Peril recounts a meeting where Barr told Trump quite directly that a lot of voters think you're an asshole.
Wow.
And that he needed to broaden his appeal beyond just the base. That kind of direct challenge.
Yeah, that takes guts. And eventually Barr took his stand publicly.
He did, December 1st. He spoke to the Associated Press. He stated very clearly that the Justice Department had not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome of the election.
Knowing that would probably cost him his job.
He knew, and it did. He resigned shortly after that.
Yeah.
It was his way of drawing a line, institutionally.
And just to paint a picture of the environment Barr was dealing with, Peril mentions his private views on Trump's legal team pushing those fraud narratives.
The book says Barr thought Rudy Giuliani was a fucking idiot, and Sidney Powell, he reportedly thought she was certifiable.
So you have the Attorney General of the United States using that kind of language, even privately, about the president's own lawyers.
It really highlights the breakdown. The internal checks, the mechanisms for managing things, they seem to have completely dissolved. Which brings us to the last, and maybe the most constitutionally exposed figure in all this.
Vice President Mike Pence.
Exactly. Because his role on January 6th wasn't advisory. It was ceremonial, yes, but constitutionally defined. And the pressure on him was immense.
To basically throw out the election results unilaterally during the certification.
Yes, and the book details how he wrestled with this, how he sought counsel.
One key piece of advice came from a former VP, right, Dan Quayle.
That conversation seems to have been crucial. Pence apparently laid out the pressure he was under from Trump, and Quayle's response was just utterly definitive.
What did he say?
According to Peril, Quayle told him flat out, "Mike, you have no flexibility on this. None. Zero. Forget it. Put it away." And then the kicker. "You have no more authority than the Queen of England. None."
No more authority than the Queen of England. That's incredibly stark.
Crystal clear, right? It provided that constitutional backbone against what became very intense, very personal pressure from President Trump. Their final meeting, January 5th, the day before the certification. Peril describes Trump as being furious when Pence finally said he wouldn't do it. Trump insisted his supporters agreed with him that Pence could and should reject Biden's electors.
You can only imagine the stress of that position. Loyalty versus oath.
The book gives a little insight into that personal cost. Apparently, Pence had this habit of joking with aides that his normal stress level was maybe a 9 out of 10.
Okay. High stress normally.
Right. But during this period, they said he looked like he was operating at a level 15. That really paints a picture.
And then January 6th itself, the immediate fallout from his decision.
It was instantaneous and terrifying. Pence released his letter explaining his constitutional reasoning just minutes before the Capitol was reached.
And the rioters were specifically targeting him.
Absolutely. Chanting, "Hang Mike Pence."
Mm.
They were actively looking for him inside the building. The Secret Service had to evacuate him quickly to a secure location downstairs near where his motorcade was waiting.
But he didn't leave, did he? He refused to get in the car.
He refused, flat out.
Why was that so significant? Just defiance.
It was deeply symbolic, but also strategic. Getting into that car and driving away would have looked like fleeing. It would have, in effect, allowed the riot to succeed in halting the constitutional process. By staying, but refusing to leave the Capitol grounds, Pence ensured he was ready to go back and finish the job the moment the building was secured. He literally wouldn't let the violence stop the count.
An incredible moment of resolve under threat. Okay, so the constitutional process, battered and bruised, ultimately holds. What did this mean for the actual transfer of power for the incoming Biden team?
Well, Biden had built his entire campaign around this idea of fighting for the soul of this nation, right? That theme came directly from his reaction to the Charlottesville rally back in 2017. So he steps into this environment that's been deeply shaken.
And his approach was immediate action.
Very much so. The mantra was, "Go big." He pushed forward immediately with that huge $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. His team was largely made up of Washington veterans, people who knew the system. The book also points out how quickly the old political dynamics snapped back into place after everything the country had been through.
You mean the partisanship?
Exactly. There's this anecdote in Peril about the stimulus negotiations. Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, is in a meeting with Senator Romney and a group of 10 Republican senators proposing a smaller alternative. And Klain is apparently just sitting there, visibly shaking his head as they make their pitch.
Already dismissing it.
Right. It's this small moment, but it shows how almost instantly the relief of just getting through the crisis gave way to hard-nosed, aggressive political maneuvering. The sharp elbows were back out.
So wrapping this up, looking back at Peril and these events, the big picture seems to be that the institutions were stressed to, maybe, their absolute limit.
For sure. The military chain of command, the Justice Department, the Vice President's constitutional role, they all bent significantly. But crucially, they didn't completely break.
They held.
They held. And the book argues pretty strongly that they held largely because of the actions of specific individuals. People like Milley, Barr, Pence, who, when faced with extraordinary pressure, ultimately chose their oath and their procedures over loyalty.
But the book also ends on a note of caution, right? That the underlying tensions haven't just vanished.
Not at all. It emphasizes that President Trump's influence remains incredibly strong. He received 74 million votes. His claims about a stolen election continue to shape a very large part of the American political landscape.
Which leads us to our final thought for you, our listeners. Peril makes a case that many of the guardrails protecting the American system aren't just laws on the books. They're unwritten norms, traditions, and frankly, the personal of the people in key positions. So given these intense, deeply personal struggles we've just discussed, where individuals felt they had to step far beyond their normal rules to uphold the system, where does the balance of power truly lie when those individuals are pushed almost to their breaking point? And maybe more pointedly, how resilient is a democracy that relies so heavily on individual character to navigate its most profound internal stresses? Something to think about.